Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Edges and Slides Cricket Podcast. I'm your host, Ashwin. We have a full house today. I'm joined by both DJ in London, Varun in Singapore, and we are here to talk about week 2 of the IPL. It is crazy to think about the fact that 2 weeks are already done. DJ, let me start with you. How are you feeling? It's kind of it's been a bit of a weird one, right? From a Delhi Capitals fan standpoint, I want to try to minimize the time we spend on it. But how are you feeling about week 2 of the IPL as a whole?
Yeah, it's good. It's like the revenge of the batters, right? Like there've been a lot of hundreds this week. We saw a few fifers in the first week and a half of the IPL, but it seems like every game seems to have a new centurion. But yeah, it's pretty dire from a Delhi Capitals perspective. 0 out of 5 is probably our second worst ever start so far. About to equal our second,
Yeah,
our
six
first.
in a row, 6 losses in a row, I think is our worst. So.
Yeah, pretty poor.
It feels horrible to think this is not our worst start ever. Like, it's been disaster all round, and we're still like, this is not the worst season yet, guys.
Yeah, Varun has termed the team the Disaster Capitals, I think, instead of the Delhi Capitals, which is a little harsh, a little disappointing, but warranted. And I mean, Varun, let me ask you. I missed last week's show, and we've been having a really fun time this IPL. There's been a lot of engagement. Thank you to everybody who listens, writes in, tweets in. We love hearing from you. Sometimes you like what we have to say, sometimes we don't, but we always love to hear from you. And Varun, last week it was interesting, right? At the time, Rinku had just hit the 5 6s, which was fun to hear you guys relive that through a recording. But sitting here, 4 teams are tied at the top of the table. Rajasthan, Lucknow, Gujarat, Punjab each have 6 points, and only one is at the bottom with 0. And interestingly, pretty early into the season, no team is undefeated. Everybody's lost at least one. So thoughts on kind of the top versus middle? It's still too early to say there's out and out leaders, right?
Yeah, it feels a little bit early to say there's out and out leaders, but I think generally, at least from my perspective, the teams I thought were kind of top were Rajasthan, Lucknow, Gujarat. They all seem to be following that trend. You can't help but think that, like just breaking it up, like a team like RCB is falling into the similar trap as they have in the previous years. Punjab and KKR have always been doing well, but in the last few years, just not well enough for the playoffs. So you're seeing that middle table battle. The teams are a little bit surprising are CSK and Mumbai, but again, all three of us didn't quite rate them that highly at the start. And then you have DC and SRH at the bottom. So it's not totally unpredictable, but a few surprises.
Yeah, actually, interestingly, for those of you who are watching us live or listening live, I had this points table open before the end of the Mumbai game that just happened, where they just took down KKR. So Mumbai has just moved up from 9th to 8th position. I had to hit refresh. But let's do kind of what you did last time, guys. Let's go from the bottom of the points table to the top, run through what happened a little. We're not going to have the time to cover every single match in detail, but we'll try to talk through some of the highlights. And if anybody has questions, comments, for those of you live on YouTube, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. DJ always does a good job reminding me. And yeah, send them in and we'll try to address them live. DJ, let's talk about the Delhi Capitals then. This is the tough one to talk about. Since we last, at the last episode, there were three losses. We were 0 wins out of 3. Now it's 5 losses. So since then, there's been a Mumbai Indians game, which was arguably a little bit close, and then an RCB game. I mean, talk to me about what's happening. What do you think it is? You can look and say top order looks pretty weak, middle order looks pretty weak, bowling looks pretty weak. Maybe this is just Kuldeep and Akshay Patel who've showed up this season. But walk me through it. How are you feeling about Delhi so far?
Well, not good, man. 0 out of 5 is a pretty bad show, to be honest. I mean, we were used to this until about 2018, right? And then we were spoiled by, let's say, the revival, the Pant era, the Iyer era, where it was kind of like a resurgent. They rebranded from the Delhi Daredevils to the Delhi Capitals, but this is very much a Daredevils show that's going on at the moment. And the worst part is that on paper, when we looked at this team, and I actually put them in my top 4. I think you did as well. There was obviously a bit of emotion in that because
It
we're
was
Delhi
definitely,
Capitals fans.
it was, yeah.
But in theory, right? Like think about it. Prithvi Shaw, he was back in the Indian team a few months ago. He's done well on the domestic circuit. He hasn't clicked. People want him to open the batting for India, and he's not doing well for the Delhi Capitals. David Warner, wherever he goes as captain, seems to like disintegrate now. Sunrisers, he won an IPL, and then after that, they've just gone down the drain. And he keeps scoring these like almost runnable 50s, which has been terrible. But on paper, that's a power packed opening team. That's I mean that's good as any other opening batters in the tournament. You've got Andrik Nortje, Akshar Patel in the form of his life, Kuldeep resurgent. It's just not been Sarfaraz. I mean, we wanted him to play the Border Gavaskar Trophy. Do you remember? So talking about form, why isn't he playing? He's had two low scores and he's out. I mean, it's not a bad team on paper, and so it makes me quite angry to see teams like the Delhi Capitals lose because they're not games that even the RCB game. You said the Mumbai game was close, yeah, but the RCB game was a gettable total, and how we not managed to get up to that score. So like you said, I mean, it's a close IPL, right? And which is why predictions are all a bit of a nonsense because every team wins some games, every team loses some games. Once you get on a roll of losing, it's impossible to stop. And so that's why they are. They're just not performing on paper, or on the field. I don't think it's a terrible team. It's a middling team, but it seemed to have a lot of the bases covered, to be honest. Robman Powell hasn't clicked. None of the players have clicked. There have been no performances of note. So that to me has been the failure of the Delhi Capitals or the disaster capitals, as Varun calls them.
Yeah, Varun, let's ask about what. Let me ask you what the disaster you think specifically is. Is it a problem of, hey, this team could look good on paper, but on a bad day, you look at a middle order of Yash Dhul, Manish Pandey, Abhishek Porel, Aman Khan, Akshar Patel, and you're like, that's not an IPL quality side? Or is it a problem of thought leadership strategy? David Warner as a skipper hasn't clicked. Ricky Ponting, Saurav Ganguly, James Hopes, Shane Watson. That is a power-packed, coaching staff, and it just doesn't seem like it's clicking. So where do you think they're going wrong?
No, I think it's not the thinking of the strategy so much. I think it's actually the players. I think, Riley Russo scored a century a year ago in T20s, and I was quite excited when we picked him up at the auction. He's done nothing. Rovman Powell just cannot play spin. I think his average against spin is like 2 or something in this IPL. 6 runs, got out 3 times. These are not the best names, but you could make it work with a strong Indian core if everyone has a specific role. So I think the overseas batsmen have just not showed up. And then when you look at the Indian core, it's a bit of a lottery system, right? In the sense that you're hearing all these Rinku Singhs of the world and Sai Sudarshans and, Prabh Simran has made runs. And, it's just, why isn't a Aman Khan or a Sarfaraz or a Prithvi Shaw, who are probably bigger names, why haven't they clicked? So it can't be... It can't just be that we've got the worst Indian players. It is something that is not clicking, and it's just unfortunate.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, 5 games in, you'd hope they try to rethink it. I do think, my quick 2 cents is there's a little bit of an issue of chopping and changing. DJ mentioned it a little. Sarfaraz hasn't played. 2 bad scores and didn't play. Rovman Powell hasn't played any game. I do not think Delhi, we said this after the first match, but they did not figure out how to use the impact player sub. And it just hasn't been that consistency. Mitchell Marsh went off, got married, came back. Delhi's still losing. I mean, just unbelievable in some ways. But
yeah, so many catches going down as well, and that's just symptomatic of it. Once you start playing badly, it just reflects in every department. But yeah, sorry.
I mean, I think well said. Disappointing. We hope for the sake of the league. Obviously, we're all Delhi fans selfishly, but for the sake of a competitive league, we hope Delhi finds a way to bounce back. And I'm already at the point where I remember seasons where we had no chance of qualifying, but we have played spoilsport for other teams in the past. So hopefully that'll at least happen again. DJ, let's keep going up. In 9th position is the Sunrisers team. You can look and say they've just coming off the back of 2 wins. Pretty good. But obviously because they had 2 losses and the first one of which was pretty big, they're falling a little behind. So a couple of interesting games this week, right? Against a Punjab Kings team, which really was only Shikhar Dhawan and a couple of, I think maybe one double, Sam Curran made double digits. Otherwise it was basically just the Shikhar Dhawan show, making 99 not out. And Rahul Tripathi came and absolutely, had an unbelievable knock to win that. And then they played KKR and ended up winning, putting up 228. And so let me ask you, first century of this IPL, I think it was, came from Harry Brook. Harry Brook, that of course at the press conference had some things to say, but yeah, talk to me about SRH. I mean, when Harry Brook comes good, Markram was hitting the ball all around the park. It looks like a good side again, right?
Yeah, Varun, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. They're still 9th out of 10th, right? That's my only comment right now.
Okay, no. Honestly, I just wanted to bring Varun in because it's obviously Sunrisers. So, it was a good batting performance. Brooks scored 100. I didn't actually catch what he said in the press conference, so you'll have to tell me what that is. But
He said something along the lines that the last few days, a lot of people in India have been saying I haven't been playing well, and now they'll start saying I've played well or
Well, I
something.
think the problematic part of it is where he said, hopefully now this will shut them up or something. I was
Yeah,
like,
something like
okay,
that.
that you need to have a little more tact than that. But anyway,
wow. But Varun, you're based in Singapore, so clearly wasn't referring to you, right?
I mean, I'm
Varun
it's
didn't
an
even bring him up
international
in the
citizen.
preview.
Yeah. The
Anyway, he was
first
your
thing
X factor, I think, Varun.
He
Ashwin.
was my X factor, but he
Yeah.
and my fantasy captain that day, by the way.
Oh wow.
But
Well played.
he was not worthy of Varun's attention in the preview. But anyway, DJ, keep going.
No, it was a solid scorer. You said mentioned Tripaঠি's come into form. I think Markram and the South African players joining has made a big difference. Janssen left arm angle in that game that Shikhar scored the 99. He blew the heart of that Punjab Kings team apart. It I think Markram looks good. He's come off a good South Africa T20. He's come off a good series recently as well. So I think that dynamic of the South African players has made their side look a lot better. That game against KKR, man, it was a bit. Um, I wouldn't say it's touch and go, but after the Rinku Singh heroics, we saw Nitish Rana and Rinku Singh kind of getting it pretty close at one stage, and it looked almost like they might pull off a second miracle in a row. But yeah, glad for the Sunrisers guys to come back. But they did this last year as well. They lost a bit in the middle, then they won a few in the middle, then they lost a lot at the end. Let's see. It's still early, man. Right? They've only played 4 games, so we'll have to see where it goes. But signs are looking a lot better than the first 2 games. Still in ninth place, but that could change pretty quickly, man. Once you put 3 or 4 wins together in a row, or 3 or 4 losses together in a row, you can go up and down pretty quickly in this IPL table.
Yeah, and Varun, anything to say about the bowling? I would shout out Mayank Markande. Didn't play the
Yeah.
first 2 games. 4 for 15, 2 for 27. I mean, that's been game changing, right?
Yeah, and you know what good quality leg spinners are, right, in the IPL in India. So I think DJ said it right. They're pretty much now coming into their own team dynamics and balance a little bit. So even a Natrajan, a Umran Malik, these guys all probably take some time to warm up. Markande, excellent. And special call out to Bhuvi, man. I mean, he's just like this experienced guy who's kind of leading the attack and just doesn't give up. And we've also not rated him that highly in the past from an India perspective, but hey, he's doing a good job. He bowls 4 overs every time between 7 and 8. I think shout out to him.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I was trying to see. I mean, Bhuvi's just feels like he's been such a stalwart of the IPL at this point. He's played so much IPL cricket. So absolutely agree. I think what's interesting now as you look at this points table is the Sunrisers are in ninth place, but they have 4 points. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4 other teams they're tied with at 4 points. Obviously, that's at the time of recording. By the time some of you are listening to this, the Gujarat Rajasthan game will be over and there'll be some more movement near the top. But sitting in 8th place right now, and Varun, I'll come to you first for these guys, is the Mumbai Indian team. Lots of interesting stuff to talk about. Same path as Hyderabad, right? 2 losses when we talked about them last week. They were 0 from 2 games, and now they're 2 from 4 with 2 wins. Let me first ask you about what happened earlier today, which is Surya Kumar Yadav, off the back of 3 ducks in his last 5 innings, walks out for the toss, says Rohit Sharma has a stomach bug. Rohit basically doesn't field. I don't know whether he knew they were going to win the toss or what it was, but doesn't field. And then suddenly we see him walk out with his pads on to bat. What's going on? Varun, this is what we all dreamed of doing as backyard cricketers, right?
Yeah, so there's 2 theories I've been getting on WhatsApp. One is the obvious one that DJ has been getting, which is that Rohit doesn't want to field, he just wanted to bat, and so he's brought himself on as the impact player and just comes out and bats. The second, in relation to stomach bug, is that Rohit Sharma was probably just found a diaper in the innings break somewhere, and he was like, "Yeah, I'll go out now. Like now, this is pretty secure. Like this is safe and secure. I think I am good to go." It was the most odd decision I have ever seen, but the vada paos on the street are not hygienic. Yes, exactly, and that's why he either found a great medicine or a diaper. But it was just shocking to me. Like I couldn't believe it. My gut feel is that this was not part of the plan, and that
Was gut feel pun intended?
it had to be.
Do you mean he padded up?
Yeah, he's padded up. Yeah, I think this wasn't part of the plan. I think somewhere down the line, he found something that just worked for him, and he was like, "Yep, I'm going out to bed."
He honestly might have spent the first innings on the toilet, like watching from
Yeah,
the
in
other
fact,
opposite side.
one of my friends even made him captain, and I gave him so much shit about choosing Rohit Sharma. And then I saw Rohit Sharma walk to bat. I had to pull back quickly.
So this segment has officially won the Edges and Sledges orange cap for most puns in one specific team section. But let's talk about the team then, right? Obviously, we mentioned a little bit about Mumbai overcoming Delhi. Rohit showed up well pretty in that game. I think he made 65 or so, and just looked like what I predicted his X factor to him to be as an X factor this series this year, because he needed to be. And Tilak continued to look solid. Not a lot to write home about, honestly, in that game, just given the fact that Delhi looked weak. But DJ, let me ask you then about today's game, right? And again, at the time of recording, but Mumbai versus KKR. Venkatesh Iyer makes a magnificent century. 185 is a good score. It's a par score. Maybe a few short, but Mumbai made such easy work of it. And when you suddenly have Rohit hit a couple sixes, Kishan find form with a beautiful half century, Sky finally finding the middle of the bat, which as India fans is good for all of us. Tilak, Tim David coming to finish it off. Suddenly this looks like a top 4 competitor side again, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they won, as you say, against Delhi. They've now won against KKR, which was looking like a bit of a form side until last week. Now they've had 2 losses in the week. Rohit looked okay. Kishan coming good and Sky coming good is big news for them, because they had Tilak actually carrying the burden of the batting for the first few games. But Rohit's
And
come good, Kishan's
I,
come good. Yeah.
I just want to say somebody like Tilak could have easily been in a Delhi, right? And that's what I meant by lottery. Like Tilak is a great batsman, but there are so
Yeah.
many like him. And when we recorded our last podcast, Mumbai, SRH, and Delhi had all won nothing.
Yeah.
But Mumbai
Exactly.
and SRH have bounced back. Sorry, DJ.
Yeah, but it's also that, like, when we were talking about Delhi again, sorry to go back to number 10, I was thinking, like, if Dhoni captained Delhi, all of these players would have been doing great things. And you're just like,
Yeah,
how? I mean,
yeah.
is Ruturaj that much better than a Shaw?
I mean,
But
I have different
technically,
views
and
on
like in
Shaw,
terms
but
of
yeah.
batting and runs, but like these guys just get the best out of them. And this is a team that has won a lot. They're a team in transition. I think everybody acknowledges that they are a team in transition, but they're a very proud franchise. So it's good to see them back winning stuff again. Of course, Delhi facilitated that, because Delhi and Mumbai were both on 0 points when they played. So that was quite a key game for both those franchises to get going. And Mumbai is the one that came out on top with
Yeah,
Tim
listen,
David and who was the other guy?
Cam
Who were
Green,
the other
right?
guys?
Cameron
And
five
Cameron Green. And I saw a
the
lovely Insta post. Is that what you were going to talk about?
yeah,
Varun?
when you need 5 of 6, where are your guys?
Oh, that was
That,
good. That was
I thought that
quality.
was awesome. Did you talk about, by the way, the Hrithik Shokeen and Nitish Rana incident today?
Not yet. Do you want to tell us quickly what happened?
I thought it was pretty intense, because apparently there's some history between these players in Delhi. Are they both Delhi players?
I
They
mean,
Or
don't.
Haryana Delhi?
I
Maybe they're
thought
North
Nitish
Zone.
Rana is Delhi, but yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
Shocking
Hrithik
is also
Shokeen is
Delhi.
Shokeen's
Yeah,
also Delhi.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
some history between these two
Apparently,
guys.
they play the Syed Mushtaq Ali. They don't talk to each other in the dressing room and stuff. Like there's a lot of history apparently.
Interesting. But Hrithik's been around for I think it's 22, 23. Rana's a bit older, so I don't know what the history is, but you don't need to be a lip reader to work out what Nitish Rana said to Hrithik Shokeen.
That was pretty shocking, actually.
Yeah, it was. I don't know what Shokeen said to him
I mean,
to.
at that moment, you realized he's from Delhi. I didn't actually know he was from Delhi. I thought he was. I don't know where he's from, but he
Yeah,
was
But at
KKR
that point, you
captain.
just assumed.
When
You
he
just
started
knew.
saying that, I was like, "Oh, he's from Delhi." Okay, cool.
yeah, and honestly, like we were watching my wife and I, we were sitting and watching the previous game, the KKR game versus who was it against? That they lost against SRH, right? And Nitish Rana came on at the end, and he came across as such a lovely guy. Like my wife was like, "That was a really nice, very positive interview. He seems like such a nice chap."
And
then the next game, you're like, "Wow."
Yeah, and just for the record on why some people are upset at this, Shakeen is 22, Rana's 29. So whether they should be or not, there's a little culture of seniority in domestic cricket. And DJ, you've played it, right? Like, but a guy
Not
7 years.
domestic, not Ranji cricket, but like very junior.
Yeah, but I mean, you understand, like we know what the culture could be like, right?
Yeah.
A guy 7 years your senior, the captain of the opposing team,
Mm.
and yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out for Hithik.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. It doesn't Yashdul captain Delhi now because he's quite young as well. I think so. I don't know what's gone on there. Delhi cricket is in a little bit of a mess anyway at the moment. But yeah, that was a big incident today, right? Wasn't it?
Yeah. So anyway, good, I guess, for the objective fans, but disappointing for us to see Mumbai Indians back kind of on the board, 4 points. You can tell I'm a little disappointed, honestly. But let's keep going up the table. Varun, let me come to you first. The RCB side, they won their first game because it was against Mumbai. So, of course, the further we go down, somebody had to win, and Faf looked really good. And, of course, Virat. They lost that second game to the KKR side by such a massive margin. And you started to worry about, okay, shades of old RCB. This was the Shardul Thakur show. They couldn't show up. Then they fell short to the Lucknow team just by 1 wicket. Right, that was just very, very, very close game. Nicholas Pooran showed up. What did he make? He made 62
Wow.
of 19. And we'll talk about Pooran and Stoinis when we talk about that side. And then, of course, RCB came good against Delhi. So 2-2, but I've actually looked pretty solid, right? Are you happy with Virat's role at the top of the order? Are you happy with how the team has kind of started to build around him?
Yeah, I am, and I think Faf and Virat are a great opening pair. And apart from Maxwell, again, it just falls apart, right? So I know there's a lot of criticism that he scored well until he was on 40, and then for his last 10 runs or something like that, he took 10 balls, for example.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of criticism he got. But you have to remember there's okay, Maxwell is there and there's no doubt that he should be going quicker. But a lot of these teams' history has been that their middle order has crumbled and they've just lost. So you can't fault somebody like Kohli for just being a little cautious. I mean, Kohli's got so many 50s that I don't think he's trying to get a 50 per se, but it's for the team.
Yeah, also, by the way, a lot of people are saying that Simon Dewell criticism, he was 42 or whatever, and then took 10 balls to make his 50. That those 10 balls happened to coincide with when the spinners came on. Everybody slowed down at the same time. So it feels cherry-picked to say, oh, it was for the milestone.
Yeah,
it may have been, but it also very well may have been that he was struggling to hit the spinners, right?
And you just had to see Faf at the other end. He couldn't get the spinners away. He was going at less than a run a ball for a really long time. And so I found this massively, like, Kohli was batting well to start off against the seamers, and you've got to give credit to good bowling as well. I mean, they bowled well. It's okay. This is not a video game that you just press a button and you hit a shot. This is what I find amazing. Like Excel and analysis and all it's fine, but like you're in the middle, you're playing a sport. It's not clockwork. They're not machines.
Yeah,
That would take all the joy out of cricket.
You can tell who the lawyer is on the show versus the business people, because Varun and I would never criticize Excel publicly.
Yeah, but RCB just did RCB things, man. They made 212. That was so great. Top 3, 61, 79, 59. And then they lost. And like you said, we'll talk about the Pooran and Stoinis later, but we have to talk about that Mankad attempt. Like, what did Harshal Patel? By the way, in the Hindi commentary, I think one of the guys calls him Purple Patel because it's one of the purple. It's so good. He's like, "Are you Purple Patel?" And I was like, "Dude, this just sounds great." But
also, shout out, apparently, I haven't heard it yet, but to the Bhojpuri commentary.
Yeah.
I haven't heard it either.
I've only
The
seen
Rinku Singh clip is insane.
Oh man, we have to watch that. But yeah, so Purple Patel, basically they needed one run of one ball or one run of two balls, something.
And they were 9 down.
Yeah.
One run, one ball, one wicket. Yeah.
Yeah, and
perfect moment.
Yeah, it's the perfect moment. In fact, Ravichandran and Ashwin came on later and said as well, like, I wish more people do this. But Purple Patel missed the stumps on his runner. I mean,
Yeah.
why were you running so wide off the wicket? Just
Also, if you bloody ball at
extreme.
118 kilometers an hour, you don't have to run that fast, right? He's running full
Yeah.
speed and jumping
He's
towards
running
slower
full speed,
balls.
and I mean, Bishnoi is not really looking at him. He's ready to take off. You should have slowed
Okay.
down
But
your runner.
Bishnoi, dude, he's such a Besharam Bishnoi. The next
He did
ball
it
as well.
again.
He did it again. You're like, dude,
So the
that
second time he did
moment
it, he was actually run out at the non-striker's end. But Harshal had already completed his bowling action, right?
Yeah, so when Harshal missed it and then went and he turned around and threw the ball,
Yeah.
that's too late because it's
Yeah.
past that point of expected release. But the ball after which, or the last ball which he actually bowled, why did Harshal bowl it? That was his moment to redeem himself, and he could have
Man,
been like, the first
Dude,
one
if
was
he
a
missed it
warning.
if you
again,
missed a mankad twice, like you missed it once, it's bad enough. People made fun of you or just joking about it. If he did it twice, he may never play cricket again. So
Yeah,
I
but I
don't.
and it
mean,
was
what
so
a time to
funny
miss it.
because
And this goes to people who are like, oh, the Mankads got no skill. It's a dismissal without any skill at
he's
all.
got a lot of skill.
I mean, if it's
Yeah.
got no skill, how do you mess it up?
Yeah, Zampa's messed it up one. That
Yeah.
caused the clarification. And we saw Shami do it so casually. Do you remember against Sri Lanka? He just came and just
Yeah.
flicked the bails off, and then Rohit did his thing. I
Yeah,
mean,
but
I think
Shami
Gautam
didn't
Gambhir
come
would have
in full
lost it.
steam, right? Like
From
he came in
wide
jogging.
angle,
How did Purple miss that, dude?
dude, purple.
No, but Gambhir would have just lost it. And then Dale Steyn tweeted karma and all. It
Yeah,
was
then he
like,
deleted his tweet, and then
yeah, it's getting too much.
but then they were also showing how Kohli was making fun of Ashwin for mankading. When he took a catch of Ashwin once and then was showing as if, oh, you just keep mankading, and now like he would have been very happy to take it, right?
Yeah,
But,
if purple had hit the bails, what would Kohli have done?
yeah,
Yeah,
he would have gone crazy.
I mean, if Purple had done it the second time, I mean, how could you have not? How could you have argued
We
that the
just
guy
did-
was not stealing yards?
We've just started calling him
We
purple.
just call it Purple now. Purple Patel.
Purple.
Hashtag Poopa.
Purple.
Poopa. Okay, all right. I'm gonna try to bring us
Partial.
back. Partial? Is that what you
Purple
just
Harshal.
said?
Partial.
What about Harpal?
This is quality.
This is the quality. This is the quality content you guys tune into Adjustments Legends for. So anyway, good for RCB, I guess, for being at 2 out of 4 despite a missed bowler's run out. I'm going to try not to call it a mankad. I'm going to cover the DJ. I have to ask you about him. We're going to cover your favorite, your second favorite side. I guess they're now your favorite franchise. Is of course CSK, because you have to pick a second now that Delhi is so far at the bottom. But yeah, I mean, when we last recorded, they were 2 out of 3, so pretty decent start. And then of course just fell short. But Rajasthan had made 175, and CSK fell 3 runs short. But Dhoni ended up on 32 of 17. He hit how many sixes? He had a few sixes in that knock, and it almost kind of looked vintage Dhoni. So just talk to me about CSK's kind of strategy with him batting at 8. Is he doing what he's done for so many years, but as he gets a little older or comes in a little later, doesn't have as much time, he needs to they left a little too much too late?
But he's not. I mean, there was speculation whether he would even bat, right? Like at the start of the tournament, whether he would actually bat. But he's now he's almost turned the clock back. Say, I don't know what, 20 years when he used to just come out and hit sixes. That's pretty much his job at number 8 because he plays like 5-10 balls under normal circumstances. Again, you should be looking at the rest of the lineup failing to chase these runs down. And the only reason they got this close was MS Dhoni did an MS Dhoni. And somebody put a great tweet out there saying, if there's 20 runs to get off the last over and Sandeep Sharma is bowling it to MS Dhoni, the pressure is not on MS Dhoni there.
I mean,
it wasn't.
It wasn't. It was to Sandeep's relief after that last ball didn't go to the boundary. It's crazy. It's crazy the expected the bar that he set basically.
Yeah, it's crazy, and it was so good to see that as a vintage performance almost. And he did take it as deep as he could, and sometimes even in his prime, sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Right? It worked more often than not. Now the percentages are probably against him, but the question should be asked is why didn't the other guys step up and do the job, right? Like Jadeja played a little bit, I think, in that game, but you needed your others like the Devon Conways, the Ruturajes, the
Yeah, and Devon made a nice 50 in that match, right? Rahane made
yeah,
31 of 19. But really, I'm 100% with you. This is not about Dhoni, right? Like
yeah,
he got him as close as he could. Ruturaj made 8 from 10. Shivam made 8 from
yeah.
9. Moin made 7 from 10. You're just eating
But
up balls and not getting runs.
he does leave a lot to the end, and that is right. I think that's always been your issue with Dhoni, like leaving
And
everything to the end. And one of the Australian commentators said something very
Shane
interesting.
Watson.
Was it Watson?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think on another podcast actually.
Yeah, one of
Uh,
the I don't know the great cricketer or something. They're okay.
Never heard
I've
of
never
him.
heard of them. No, I'm joking. They're obviously very good. So
yeah,
the
he said
Australian podcast. You want
basically
to say?
In Australia, we were taught to uh, finish it off as soon as we can, versus Dhoni who leaves it till late and says the pressure's on the bowler. So it's just a different style. But I think everyone was very excited seeing Jaddu and Dhoni there. They thought they'll really roll back the clock. And I was surprised Jaddu didn't donk on in the final. And that's why I said we have to give credit to Sandeep Sharma for that.
Fully agreed. All right, so we've covered the bottom half of the table. 5 teams at 4 points, or 4 teams at 4 points and 1 on 0. We're going to take a really quick break. We'll come back, talk about the top 5 teams, and then do a little bit of a fantasy summary of how everybody's doing. So stay tuned. We will be right back. Welcome back to the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Varun, DJ made you talk about SRH, so I'm now also going to make you talk about KKR. We talked at the last time we talked about last week's episode. They had won 2 out of 3, and then they've lost the last 2 matches. And I know when KKR was playing SRH, that was a tough one for you. So we talked obviously about that Harry Brook innings. Let's talk a little bit about the response. Nitish Rana, Rinku Singh, and the fact that they needed, I think it was at one point 72, 73 off 4 overs, and we were like, maybe they could do this thing. And at one point it was 34 off 7 or something, and he hit a 4, and we're like, all right, 30 off the last 6, or we've seen this done before. I mean, how crazy is that to start with, that Rinku has set that expectation? And by the way, hit 58 of 31, which is an outstanding knock in any other circumstance.
Yeah, and Umesh is always on the other end when Rinku's donking it around. So I don't know how it happens. But yeah, credit to KKR, man. Like our last episode was titled about Rinku Singh, right? And it's not a one-time thing. He came out and did it again the next match. It was just, they made too many, man. 228 is just, you know how we always talk they were 15 short? This was definitely 15 too much. And for KKR. And so full credit to them. They're batting, you know what I like about KKR is every game somebody different stands up. And it's very often somebody from that Indian core. And so, Jagdishan did well. Nitish Rana and Rinku Singh were just excellent. At one point, you were really like, these guys are trying their best to make a match of it. And ultimately, it did get a little bit out of hand. Right? It was just a little bit too difficult in the end. But you give a lot of credit to them for how they went about it. But yes, after the euphoria of last Sunday, where it was all about KKR, they've now lost 2, as you said, right? And in Wankhede, they lost pretty badly. Despite Venki Iyer hitting 100, their last 5 overs was very difficult to watch, right, of their batting, despite having Rinku and Russell. And so something just slowed down for them. But KKR would have been looking to build on the momentum from last Sunday, and it's just not gone their way. They've lost 2 in a row now.
DJ, let me ask you, we've talked about it a little with Warner. I fully agree with what Varun said. How much are they hurting from Nitish Rana being skipper? And this is not a specific critique of him. It's more a critique of, like, it's not a skipper who was planning to be. They announced it pretty late. He hasn't really captained this franchise before. And a few specific things I look at, right? One, I say this selfishly from a fantasy standpoint, complete underuse or misuse of Lucky Ferguson. I mean, why do you have him in the side if he's batting at 9 and bowling 1 to 2 overs a game? At that point, just play an extra batter. And your spinners have done well. 2, what is their strategy on Andre Russell? I mean, every time he bowled a ball, he fell to the floor in the first in the previous match. And
he took a wicket and then fell to the floor.
Then walked off the field, then came out, batted a little, and they keep playing him. Like, is he eating up a valuable overseas slot for them?
See, I'll take the second question first because it's slightly easier. I think Russell, no franchise would be able to drop him because he just does crazy things. Like even in that game that we talked about, he was dehydrated, falling all over the place, cramping. I think he took 3 wickets in that game and gave them the breakthroughs that they needed, right?
Yeah, but sorry,
Uh,
let me just say the people being left out for him, when for the Russell
mm,
craziness that may happen,
mm,
when it's happening once every 3 innings, it's one thing. When it's happening once every 6, 7, 8 innings,
mm.
Jason Roy, David Visa, Lytton Das, and depending on the game, Tim Saudi, like you're leaving out names who can truly be game changers for a guy who might be once in 8 innings, right?
Yeah, but
I mean, just to,
I mean,
I think that decent guy keeps, so at least Jason Roy can come in very easily. But yes, Russell
Yeah,
is like,
they're backing Gurbaz for his batting, and he's showed some
yeah.
glimpses. But yeah, I agree.
yeah.
Yeah, but I think Gurbaz can probably be swapped out. I think it's very hard for any franchise to think about dropping a Russell just because what he gives you with the ball. He bowled for the first time this season in this game, right? Where he took all those wickets and he took a wicket with his first ball. So it's just that it's literally just that X factor that a player like Russell can get you. And I see it being very hard for them to drop him. I do agree that there's been a little bit of misuse of resources. Loki hasn't been bold enough. I think um, Rinku and Nitish himself have they batted too far down the order, and I think Harsha Bhogle asked them the question as well, or somebody asked the question after, "Are you batting too far down?" I mean, why don't performing players get pushed up the order like an Akshar Patel is in the form of life? Bat him at 4. It doesn't say he has to bat at 6 or 7 because he's an all rounder. Just bat
Yeah.
him at 4. Similarly, Rinku should be coming out at 4 for Kolkata, right? Like just smashing. He's in the form of life. Use it. I don't think on the field there's that much he's done wrong, other than like maybe a Locky. He's bowled his spinners well. When I mean Chakra and Narayan have given him quite good control in those middle overs. But yeah, it throws a franchise when your captain isn't there, like Iyer isn't there, right? So you've had to step up. It's makeshift. He knows it's temporary, so he's trying to do his best, impress and stuff. So yeah, it's um it's a tough place for Rana to be in. But on the Russell question, I'd still play Russell just because he can win your game with the bat and the ball by himself completely.
Yeah, fair. I'm not 100% sure I'm in the same place, but it seems like a valuable utilized overseas spot. But maybe they have enough all round options that they can afford that. I would, sitting middle of the table at this point is absolutely fine. 4 points from 5 games. Let's go to the next side, the Punjab Kings. So very interesting, right? We obviously talked about, as you were recording last week's episode, was the game against Hyderabad where Shikhar showed up and against his former franchise. It's very confusing for me in the Punjab Hyderabad game to see Shikhar batting, being like, wait, is he Hyderabad again? What team does he play for? But since then, they played against a Gujarat team who seem, pretty unstoppable right now, and fell short. And then they picked up a nice victory against the Lucknow team. So, DJ, let me ask you about Punjab kind of as a whole, right? Over reliance on Shikhar Dhawan at the top of the order, or some of the lower order guys starting to come good? And as a side note, how great was it to see Josh Little bowling to Matthew Short? That was just a really nice moment.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. It's pretty funny. But Short is seeming to do well. I think you were the one that said he'd come from Australia in the Big
Mm-hmm.
Bash. He'd done well and stuff. He's a big hitter, tall guy, long reach. He looked like he okay. Can play the power game. Shikhar didn't actually play the next game, so I think he was out with a shoulder
Yeah,
injury or something.
Sam Curran was the captain. Yeah.
Oh, what? Sam Curran was captain.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he picked up some junk wickets at the end. So
Mm-hmm.
good for Sammy bowling that last over, picking up a few. But I think they've gone under the radar, as I said last week, a little bit. They seem to be winning quite a lot, and that's based on their batting being pretty power packed actually. Um, and they seem to be, yeah, dark horses really, and so they've done well. I've liked watching Punjab, but it is confusing slightly seeing Shikhar bat in a red jersey.
Yeah, but let me ask you then. In the Punjab Lucknow game, right? Punjab came good, outstanding knock by Sikandar Raza, who I think you had or one of us had mentioned. We hope he gets a game, and he seems like he's earning it, right? A really nice 50 in the middle order. But we're going to talk this more when we get to Lucknow. If you remember who my X factor was for the Lucknow Super Giants team, I said it was going to be strike rate, right? Some criticism of David Warner, a little bit of Kohli as we talked. Rahul notched up yet another 50. He made 74 at 132. Team got to 160 and it wasn't enough. So is that a problem? Is that going to be a problem for all these teams going forward, or are some going to figure out better than others how to use that anchor role and really build around it?
Look, in the Warner and Kohli thing, they don't have that much backing them, right? After them, rather. So I think they need to play a certain way, and they are still, I don't know, it's a tough one, man, because you're going to sound like a hypocrite, right, for saying it's okay for Kohli and Warner to do it, for not for KL. But essentially, KL Rahul played almost 10 overs and made 74, and the others around him played 10 overs and made 85 or something like that. And so you have, being the set batsman, you have gone at a strike rate lower than all the other batsmen combined. The pressure on them, the fact that they made runs at a higher strike rate than you as a team, means there was also pressure on them to keep it even more, because you still only got to 150 odd after all that, right? And they just kept getting out because they just had to feel that pressure to hit. I mean, look at what Stoinis and Puran did in the last game. If Rahul had just kind of provided a little bit more mind space to them to come in, get set, and then go for it, I think it could have been done. So yeah, it's going to be an odd statement, but I am very critical of KL Rahul, man. It's just nothing. I think my problem is I don't see him evolving. I think he's like he's trying to justify that I'm always right, and he's not evolving as a result of that.
Yeah, very, very interesting, and we'll come and talk a little bit more about the depth he has around him when we talk Lucknow. But good for Punjab to be sitting at 6 points in 5 games. I'm actually happy for Shikhar as an India player, as a former Delhi player, or as a Delhi boy and stuff. Just good to see. But DJ, we're now into our top 3. So let's go through our top 3 sides right now. And again, this will evolve. By next week, just based on the math and the games, we could have completely different top 3. But Gujarat is sitting here, and we say they've only got 3 wins out of their 4. That's why they're there. But they've played one less game, and their one loss was to that Rinku Singh once in a lifetime type of inning. So really consistently 3 wins, right? We won't talk too much about the Rinku Singh heroics, but yeah, I mean, pretty good for the reigning champions, right? As you look around that side, Shubman Gill seems like he's cementing. I don't believe in the concept of all format players necessarily, but he seems like he's cementing his position. Rashid Khan got that hat trick at one point. Saha showed up a little bit. David Miller's around. Hasn't needed to do much, honestly, to win. I mean, looks like they have all their bases covered, right?
Yeah, and Tewatia will finish every game for you because he's always there at the end.
That's it.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? Like, again, a bunch of, let's say, they're not like the top players that come to your mind when you think of T20, right? Maybe a Pandya, maybe a Miller, but like Shubman Gill isn't the top T20 player that comes to your mind when you think of an explosive opener. But it's what happens when you're given belief, the team gels well together. A Tewatia, I mean, like, how many Tewatias do you have in this IPL? I mean, and I talk about the caliber of player, right? Like, it's the Tilak Verma argument that you've just made, Varun.
You asked how many Tewatias you have. From Delhi's perspective, 0. There are so many Tewatias going around, and we couldn't pick one.
No, but talking about that, we've got more questions coming about Delhi, their strategy, auction strategy, and stuff. We've forgotten to talk about the main Delhi event this week.
Virat, and Dada.
Dada and Virat, guys.
So that was great.
Varun, tell us what happened really quickly.
So basically, Virat first hit a century and then looked towards the dressing room and kind of, punched his chest and repeated what Nitish Rana said to Hrithik Shaukin. Although Kohli didn't really have a fight with anyone at that moment. But
Kohli's always having a fight with somebody.
If you watch the 2 clips, what Kohli said after 50 is worse than what Nitish Rana said after being in a fight, in a heated argument in that moment.
And remember, Kohli has scored. He's gone 3 years without 100, and his celebration was completely calm.
Yeah.
And this half century was not 100, Varun. It was a half century.
Against Delhi.
So that is the level of feeling. So go on. There's more.
Yeah. Then, as he's walking near the Delhi dressing room, he kind of looks straight at Saurav Ganguly with these dagger eyes, and Ganguly is the one who's looking away. And that's the thing, man. That's the thing. Ganguly has no power today. And I remember saying this many, many months ago that when you have that power, just think twice about decisions you take, because that seat is going to be taken away from you, and you're going to be sitting in the dressing room as an assistant coach or whatever the word that is used for Dada, with absolutely no power, and you have to look away. Then the teams lined up, and it was great because it was like Ponting and Dada have their own issues also. And so as Kohli was walking, shaking hands, there was Ponting, and then Dada was next. And Ponting caught him and started making a joke or jabbing with him about something, and Dada actually skipped Ponting, went around and went on to shake everyone else's hand. So we know about
Ponting
all
and Kohli, right?
Yeah, we know a lot about the history there with Dada and Kohli, and a lot of us do feel that Dada is a big reason for Kohli leaving captaincy and things like that. But yeah, man, I guess this is the thing about cricket and aggression. When you get a chance to give it back, you will.
But king hota hai aur prince hota hai. I think
Yeah,
that sums it up,
exactly.
right?
It's a quality line. Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. It's been an interesting, this is a niche plug for those of you who also happen to be tennis fans on listening to the show, but it's been a weird week in the world of post-match handshakes. Varun and DJ, if you haven't seen it, Medvedev has been playing at the Tennis Open in Monte Carlo, and they've had some icy handshakes at the net, some banter. So it's been weird for me in the two sports I watch. Lots of interesting
Why
handshake
though?
drama.
Because he's Russian.
Oh, no, some of it was Meds
They
was
don't
doing
like
some dumb stuff on the court, and then Zverev said, "You don't play fair," and this, and anyway, it was. And then in the post-match interview, he said something like, "That guy had 3 match points. He should have won it." So anyway, this is not a tennis podcast, but maybe I'll start one of those someday. Right, Varun, let's come back and quickly talk about Lucknow then. Right, second in the table. You've been critical a little bit of KL Rahul. I want to ask you about 2 things really quickly. Right, 5 and 6, Nicholas Puran and Marcus Stoinis. When they don't come off, obviously it doesn't work. But when they do, maybe the best 5 and 6 in this league. And then Rahul's opening partner, right? We're getting some questions on it too. As good as Kyle Mayers has been, to keep Quinton de Kock out of a starting 11 is unbelievable. And now that Mayers got substituted off in the last game, they're clearly not seeing him as a bowling option. Whereas he was opening the batting and opening the bowling. He was
I captained him, and then he just was substituted off the field.
So thoughts on their kind of overseas players' role? We talked a little about Rahul already.
I think, let's not talk more about that. I think I liked Mayers a lot, man. Like, there were some of his back foot punches that were like a cover drive that went for 6. And I haven't seen that kind of shot for a very long time. That just shows you the size of the guy, the power of the guy. Like, I don't think he's done enough to be deserved to be dropped. But at the same time, Quinton de Kock is one of the best T20 batsmen out there, and he's sitting on the sideline because of team combination. The issue I feel is that, like a Rovman Powell, if Mayers is not a good player of spin, if he's not a good number 5 or 6 batsman, I think he's going to find the short end of the stick. I think he's going to be the one to get dropped, and he really should not. Last time we saw Evan Lewis, I think, bat at 3 for Lucknow, and he did a great job. So Rahul is not going to drop himself down the order. And I think you could argue that Stoinis and Puran play a similar role. So I think LSG will, if they start losing, they will probably look to change something, and they might ask a Mayers to bat at 3. Because remember, Deepak Huda and Krunal Pandya are number 3 and 4, and they have not done well, especially Deepak Huda. He has just been a disaster. So there is clearly a case for maybe looking at a Mayers coming at 3.
Who would you drop though? Like between Stoinis and Puran, they played those blinders of
So which is why I think it's not going to happen soon. But because Stoinis isn't bowling much, and Puran is the keeper, I would probably say Stoinis is a little bit more at risk. But yeah, DJ, right, it's not going to happen soon. And that's why I said that's what the whole thing is, right? Mayers is going to be unlucky to get dropped.
Yeah, and you might have a little bit of when they're playing at the smaller grounds, Stoinis is worth it, right? Just sheer strength. He's going to hit more 6s, whereas in the larger grounds, Quinton de Kock is a better option, right? He tends to hit more along the ground. So
yeah, like the Chinnaswamy Stadium is where Stoinis and Puran got those runs, right?
And it makes 100% sense. Those are the guys to play at a stadium
nice
like
one.
that.
Good.
All right, and we're at the top of the table. They're playing right now. Gujarat and Rajasthan are playing right now. If you've seen me looking over, it's because I got a screen going there. But DJ, let's talk about the Rajasthan team, right? Lost one game to the Punjab side, which obviously happened before last week, and then they won 2 on the trot. And really, the big test they're facing right now is Gujarat. So we'll see how they net out today. But yeah, again, when Josh Butler, who obviously Varun's a big fan of, when Josh Butler's firing, when you get Ravi Ashwin doing pretty well with the ball, I think he picked up a 2 for 25 in the last match. He also batted well. Samson had a couple good innings and then didn't come quite as good after that, which unfortunately
Has he got 2 ducks
he got
after the 250?
2 good scores and 2 ducks, which is kind of exactly what I said would happen, unfortunately.
So you're
But
the
yeah,
only one who's still safe on the predictions because
but you have
SRH is back on top and KKR is losing. So
that's it. Jaiswal looked good early on. Padikkal has finally come good. Dhruv Jurel had some really nice shots there at the end of that third match. But yeah, it looks like a very balanced side. It all seems like it's coming together for the Rajasthan team this year, right?
yeah, man, they've done well at the mega auction. They had a very unbalanced side with players just from England basically for a long time, and they fixed that, rectified it because they had availability issues when England like players couldn't go and stuff. Um, Yeah, they look. This is a repeat today, by the way. Sunday is a repeat of last year's final, Gujarat Titans versus the
Mm-hmm.
Rajasthan Royals, and it's shaping up to be a pretty interesting game already. They took 2 early wickets. Trent Bolt again. We can't forget the value of someone like Trent. He takes early wickets, and they're like gold in this form of the game because a lot of the runs come from the top order, right? And today he's dismissed with the pops and he's gone. But yeah, Gill is stepping up now. Pandya is in. So there's firepower to come. There's Tewatia, remember? There's David Miller. Th- but Gujarat also look good with the likes of Alzari Joseph. He's bowling some serious heat. He's bowling above 150 in some cases. So the top two are really close together, and I think they're tied right at the moment. You said 3 out of 4, both of them. So you'll have a clear leader at the end of today's game. But man, Rajasthan look good. They've got all their bases covered. Spin. They bring in Chahal as an impact player, which is the right use of the impact player. But Chahal is a complete. I don't want to say, but he's a complete waste with the bat.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's a perfect impact player for them when they bowl second.
Yeah, I mean, I think on impact players, you said it right. Some have used it well. I think if you have any bowlers who are just absolutely horrendous batsmen, that's who you should use. On the flip side, if you have any batters who will never bowl and are bad in the field, and I think that's been disappointing for me. Is like with the Venki Iyer, for example. Even if he's not going to bowl, he's a good fielder. So why are you not dropping your batter who happens to be the worst fielder on the side? We've
But they
seen
did
a
that
lot
with
of.
Rohit. Sorry, he dropped himself.
No, but the other thing about impact players is that I feel like teams are very fixated. Like they have just got this one person in mind. Now Chahal is going to be the impact player no matter what.
Yeah.
I feel like you're going to see a little bit of a change in the next couple of weeks because you can't. You can't have a fixated strategy for 14 games. It's just not going to work.
You've just starting to see it too. You've seen a couple of sides when once they're 5 or 6 down, if they lose a few wickets early, they drop an opening batter who got out to bring in one extra batter. And same thing if you're having, which is exactly the intended use of the impact player. So I'm 100% with you there. Varun, let me quickly ask you last thing about Rajasthan before we wrap up. What is Ravi Ashwin doing with his batting position? Like at one match early on, he walked in at 4, then he walked in at 5 in this last game. Like, is this his idea? Is Sanju Samson really the strategic brain behind? Let me promote Ashwin, or is he just being like, I'm going to walk out and I'm a senior player and let me do it?
I think it comes down to what DJ was saying earlier, which is why doesn't Akshar bat at 4? Why doesn't Tewatia bat higher? Why doesn't Rinku Singh bat higher? I think some guys are specialized. And I think they train like that, they practice like that. And I think like a Hetmeyer is one of those. So to make sure Hetmeyer plays only those last 4 or 5 overs, you have to send an Ashwin in. And
Ashwin is the filler.
Yeah, and really, I think, like I said, right, like a Tewatia, for example, he won that last game and said, I train like that. In fact, David Miller was on the other end, one of the best T20 batsmen, and Tewatia called him through for the single, and David Miller was like late and scampering through, and like Tewatia has given him an instruction, right? Because there's like 3 balls to go. I practice every day of my life for this scenario. I'm going to take it. And I think that's what sometimes happens.
Yeah, and they do clutch stuff as well, because even
Yeah,
like the on the opposite end, the RR team against Chennai, right? Sandeep Sharma, that came up with the goods under extreme pressure, and
Yeah.
Sanju Samson backed. You wouldn't think that you would back a Sandeep Sharma to bowl that last over to an MS Dhoni, no matter how old he is. And Sanju backed his player, and that's what good teams do.
Yeah, I mean that's absolutely well said. If you back a player and it comes off, it's a great strategy. But you need, DJ, to your point, everybody else to come good. The whole team needs to step up and support with the field, with their fielding, with getting enough runs. But this has been great, guys. I mean, aside from the fact that Delhi's at the bottom of the table, and we're starting to get questions in like, will DC go winless this season? Which I'm going to answer and say no.
No,
I
no.
think they're going to lose a lot more. But at some point, when they need one win to spoil somebody else's playoff shot, that's when DC will show up.
They need one batter to go ahead and score like an 80, 90, 100 to show how it can be done. And then the season will get better. That's what a Warner needs to do, not a 50 of 48 balls.
There it is. Well said. Boys, let's talk a little bit really quickly before we wrap up about the fantasy league. So thank you for we now have over 100 teams in the Edges and Sledges fan league. If you are listening to us and playing fantasy cricket, go ahead and join our team. Join our league. It's on Twitter, Discord, etc. We'll try to post this in the show notes as well. But join our league, compete with us. I'm going to start bottom to top for the three of us, as we've been doing for this points table too. So DJ, I had to scroll pretty far, man, to see you languishing at about 53rd in the league. So not a great look, I'm sorry to say. Varun, you would be, I don't think you're officially yet in this league, so we got to get you to join.
you have to guess what I am.
But I did the math, and you would be around 41. But I do also think you have Shubman Gill as your vice captain, and he's batting well. So lots will change right now. And it takes me a few minutes to scroll really high up to see myself in number 13. So really pushing for that top 10 position. Had some good picks this week with Harry Brooks century.
You just like made yourself sound good and jinxed me in the current match at the same time. Like that's the worst thing you could do.
That's perfect.
I've just used one of my boosters though, so that's going to change.
I have not used any of them yet. Don't forget to use your boosters, guys. That can really change the game. So that's going to be interesting.
So my overseas booster is in play today.
Joss Butler.
So I've got 4 overseas players. So use them when you play 4 overseas players. Is the top fantasy tip, is what I would say.
Should we be taking fantasy tips from somebody in 53rd though?
Bro, it's a long season.
All right.
Well, by the time
and I've beaten you in the last 3 years.
Yeah, by the time this airs, if his overseas booster worked, he'll be at like 30 or something.
Yeah, he'll be ahead of me, maybe. Yeah, but shout out to the teams in the lead right now. In first place, the team name is Thurup Gulan. This is the best part of the job, is reading out these names. Number 1 with 8569 points. So really, really good. But Captain Sanju Samson today, which is kind of this high risk, high reward type strategy. Number 2 is Grandmaster is 11. And number 3 is Master 11. So interesting to see if you guys have any sort of correlation. Let us know. Is that father and son or the same guy running the team?
It's like Master and Grandmaster.
I'm Master, I'm Grandmaster.
That's it. That's the show, guys. That's a wrap for this week. Fun to recap IPL week 2 with you all. Hopefully, DJ, this is a better fantasy week for you. Hopefully, for all of us, it's a better week for the Delhi Capitals. If you're still with us on YouTube, one more time, hit that like and subscribe button. If you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, give us a like. A 5-star review always goes a really long way. And send us in your comments, feedback, criticisms, high praise, whatever you want to send in. We're always here for it. We will be back next week to talk about week 3 and potentially a very different looking points table and leaderboard. This has been the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. Signing off.